Hello, families! We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out Understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net or call our hotline at 775-337-7566. Hello, families! We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net or call our hotline at 775-337-7566. Hello, families. We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net or call our hotline at 775-337-7566. Hello, families. We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net or call our hotline at 775-337-7566. Hello, families! We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net or call our hotline at 775-337-7566. Hello, families. We are the Behavioral Health and Management team at Washoe County School District's MTSS department. That stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We are looking forward to helping you navigate this difficult time while at home with your children. We want to support you and your family to set your students up for success. Here are 5 strategies to support positive behavior and a smoother educational experience for your students at home. First, create routines and structures within your home. Most children have very predictable routines at school, and extended time at home may be difficult for some children without a solid structure. Organize your day so your children know what the day will look like. Include chores, learning time, puzzle time, outside time, and choice activities. Let your children choose what activity they may want to engage in. Any way you can make the schedule visual would also be very helpful. For ideas on creating a schedule with children of varying ages, visit the CDC website. You can find links to our recommended resources and websites in the description below. Second, try the 5-to-1 strategy. Students are experiencing stress with what is going on in the world, as well as adapting to the changes of learning at home. Parents are also in a new role, and their expectations are different. Students are also struggling with this change and may act out in different ways. In this strategy, you give attention to the behavior you want to see, to allow students to learn what is expected. It's easy to give attention to the behavior you don't want, but this often increases that behavior. Give positive attention when your children are behaving well, 5 times more often than correcting their bad behavior. This helps move them in the right direction. You can find examples on the district website. Third, be specific with praise. It is often easy to give a good job here and there, but when you are specific, you give your children a more accurate view of what to work on. State clearly what the child is doing correctly and the positive effect that has. An example of this would be when your child gets right to work on their schoolwork without you having to ask. You could say, "I saw you get right on the computer to work on your math, and that is awesome." You can also add a more personal note such as, "I know math has been a difficult subject for you to master through this digital learning time, and you are working hard at it. It is important for the feedback to be genuine, so that children hear that you really mean it." Good practice for this is, anytime you notice someone in your household doing something helpful, give them specific praise. Try it for yourself, too. Fourth, brain breaks are another strategy to help you and your child throughout the day. Children have difficulty sitting for extended amounts of time and need breaks to get up and move. Brain breaks help kids self-regulate and manage their emotions when they begin to get frustrated. It helps them recognize when they might need a break. They can reduce stress and frustration while increasing attention and productivity. Some examples are jumping jacks, deep breathing exercises, and stretching. GoNoodle.com has tons of videos that are really fun for both kids and parents. Also check out understood.org. A 5th strategy is one often used in the classroom, but which can easily be used at home. Teachers often use reinforcement for students to complete tasks or to maintain appropriate behavior. For example, make a contract that if the student completes 3 assignments, they will earn 30 minutes of digital time. Or use visuals, such as putting a marble in a small jar each time the student is on task. Then the student earns a treat once the jar is full. Remember to keep it age and individual appropriate. Little guys can't keep quiet and on task for much more than 10 to 15 minutes without needing a break, where many older students can focus for 45 minutes. Make sure rewards are something they want and are motivated to work towards, and can understand clearly how to achieve it. Have fun with this. Children and parents too need to relax and recharge. Play games, do puzzles, or cuddle up and read a book. Go outside for a walk and enjoy the fresh air. Cook a meal together. This is a difficult time for the whole world, and we must remember to meet our basic needs as a family. Be sure to check the links in the descriptions below for plenty of resources to help yourself and your family. If you would like any additional supports during this time, please reach out to us. You can email us at mtss@washoeschools.net.
right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual forum. I am Melina Raymond, President of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees. On behalf of my fellow trustees who are watching the forum along with you at home, we are excited to provide this opportunity to our valued community members, staff, students, and families. We understand that these are difficult times for everyone. We are committed to clearly communicating with our staff, families, and students throughout this process. And this virtual forum is one of the ways we are sharing information with you. We also have a comprehensive website dedicated to WCSD reopening. If you go to the district's main webpage at www.washowschools.net, you will find a link to School Reopening Plan on the top of the page. On this reopening webpage, you will find the reopening plans we have submitted to the Nevada Department of Education, FAQs for families and staff, survey results, documents, and links to resources. The decisions made at last Tuesday's board meeting are the first steps of many to follow that will prepare us to reopen our schools in August. Now, the really hard work starts as school district leadership works with our principals, teachers, and school staff to develop specific implementation plans for each of our schools. With that, I would like to introduce Superintendent Dr. Kristen McNeil and ask her to say a few words.
Thank you very much, President Raymond. Welcome to everyone joining us tonight. You know, I recognize that as we are moving forward with our plans for the upcoming school year, there are many, many questions that you all have from our staff, our families, and our students. Our goal this evening is going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. As President Raymond mentioned, we are working hard to provide you with timely, up-to-date information as decisions are made. Our reopening website is awesome, and I recommend that you check it frequently in the weeks to come. I also want to take a quick minute to thank our reopening task force. This task force has more than 70 members that are serving many, many hours. We are proud of the work of our teachers, our principals, our central office, our department staff, employee association representation, our business community, faith-based community, public health, and all of our employees that have taken the time to get engaged and help us with this tremendous challenge that lays before us. I also want to say that on July 7th, after a very lengthy board meeting, we discussed many topics that are of interest to you. If you are interested in a specific topic, we have information at the bottom of the district's homepage and on social media that provides the exact topic of the board meeting and that is also time-stamped for where you will be able to locate that information when it came up during the board meeting. We'd like to thank Trustee Cotto for helping us with this. We hope that you will find this useful. I also want to say that tonight's virtual forum is closed captioned. It is in English, and for our Spanish-speaking families, we also have our Facebook group that we would like for you to join, WCSD en Español. You know, as the superintendent, this has probably been one of the most challenging times, especially as for a new superintendent. But I also know that as a community, we are here for each other. And I've said that publicly, and I will continue to say that. As the school district, as the Board of Trustees, we can't do this alone. And it is tremendously important as a community for the education of our students and for the health and welfare of our students and our staff members that we take the time to have patience and take the time to listen to one another. This isn't about politics. This isn't about anything other than educating our students and making sure that our staff and our families are safe. And so I hope that tonight that you will be able to take time, listen listen to the questions, and we will do everything in our power to get out as much information as we possibly can tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. McNeil. Your words are very powerful and true. I appreciate you saying that. We are ready to get started. We have a lot of questions in the queue, and so I'm going to actually hand it over to Colleen DeLong from our Communications Department to explain how things will work this evening.
Great. Thank you, President Raymond, and hello to all of our viewers. Everyone has been submitting questions, and we have that open for you to do so at questions@washoschools.net. I'd like to provide you with a few details. As I mentioned, we have received questions from the community, and we are anxious for you to continue to submit questions for us this evening. We are going to try to answer, but we will be concluding at 7 p.m. this evening, and we may not get to all of your questions. Know that we are continually updating the FAQs online at our reopening webpage and intend to answer any unanswered questions there. We will also be grouping like questions together and not answer them individually, as we have already seen some trends in the questions that have been submitted in advance, and many of these questions have been asked multiple times. Also, I'd like to let you know that in addition to President Raymond and Superintendent Dr. McNeil, we have district staff who will be able to answer specific questions that you may have this evening. And I would also like to let you know that we are practicing physical distancing and wearing our face masks. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. And we have received a lot of questions about face coverings and physical distancing in our classrooms. So I think it would be ideal to start with this topic. And I think we'll start with the face coverings. Some of the questions that we've seen, and they've been repeated many times, are how will teachers and schools enforce students wearing masks? What if a student refuses to wear a mask, or an employee or a visitor to our schools? So I think we'll start there.
Great question.
Great. Well, I'd love to take this question first as the president of the Board of Trustees, and speaking on behalf of the Board of Trustees. This was a hugely important topic for us. In fact, I think we spent over an hour talking about masks alone at our board meeting last week. But I can say that there was no hesitation in our decision. There was no doubt that what was right for our district was to actually go a bit above and beyond the governor's directives for face coverings and actually require everyone in our district wear a face covering on school property. And that includes our youngest students. And you know, we debated this. We know that that is a challenge for young ones, but it is vitally important to us that we not only keep our students safe, but also our students protect our teachers and staff. And all of the science that we've read as individual trustees, but primarily the recommendation that came to us from the staff and the task force, really led us to believe that the best thing we can do for our community as a whole and our students is to require face coverings.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, President Raymond. And you know, at that board meeting, I stated on the record, and I'll say it again, you know, we have to do this as a community, and we have to do this for the safety of our staff members, and that includes on the buses as well. We have options available for families that may not choose to want to, you know, have the face covering for their child, and we do have distance learning options for the families. But when you are going to be coming onto district property, the mandate is that you will be using a face covering. And that's for the safety of our students. That is for the safety of our teachers and our principals and our support staff as well. And, you know, as the superintendent, I'm doing my part as well. When I go to the grocery store, I'm wearing my face covering. When I'm in our district administration building, I'm wearing my face covering. And, you know, that's part of the responsibility of being a citizen of this community. It's not political. I've also stated that I don't want to have the management of this rest solely on our teachers' shoulders and our principals and our bus drivers. I do not want a bus driver to ever be put into the position of having to make a decision as far as if a child comes onto a bus without the face covering. We will supply face coverings for students that need face coverings that may not have their own. We will supply them. But this is something that we feel very strongly about in the Washoe County School District.
That ties in with another question we received a number of times about if face masks will be provided and how often will they be replaced, and will there be enough for everyone that needs them?
We are doing, and I know we have Mr. Searcy here as far as to help answer questions around personal protective equipment. But we are doing everything that we can physically do to make sure that we have enough PPE for students and for our staff members. We have put in very large bulk orders, not only for face coverings as well, but also face shields for students that may need a face shield, and then also employees that may request a face shield. And I know we also have Margaret Allen here as well for student health services as well too. But personal protective equipment, you know, includes face coverings, but it's also going to be hand sanitizer as well. So I don't know if Mr. Searcy would like to add any additional information for that as well as far as the amount of PPE.
And possibly you can talk about hand washing, how that will be accomplished in the schools too, because we've received a number of questions about that. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Adam Searcy. I'm the Chief Facilities Manager for the school district, and I've been working with health services, as you mentioned, and many of our school district administrators on what PPE quantities to purchase, how we might most effectively distribute and make these available throughout our schools in the day, as well as working with the health district on what the most cost-effective safety precautions might be. So starting with the face coverings, on all of these really, but face coverings specifically, we've made very conservative assumptions with our orders. So specifically, ordering enough face coverings for all of our students and all of our staff to return to our buildings. We know now that that's not necessarily going to be the case, but and furthermore that many will choose to provide their own as it's been required by our state, but that those purchases have been made, the majority of those orders have been received, and those supplies are being delivered starting as soon as next week to some of our schools. Further, the in-classroom products such as the hand sanitizer, the soap and water, the disinfectant solution, that's going to be managed by our custodial staff and distributed and made available in every one of our classrooms. These are in addition to the typical and ongoing cleaning procedures that our custodial staff does on a regular basis. This is a disinfectant product that will kill coronavirus and many other viruses. The hand sanitizer is new to most of our schools as a standard item, but the hand washing has been and will continue to be really the superior line of defense. We're fortunate to have sinks and soap and paper towels in all of our schools in a variety of locations. It will be a burden, a logistical burden that, just like many aspects of this pandemic, will cause disruption, but it will be important that the teachers, the principals, we all work together to schedule routine, regular, supervised hand washing with all the students in the classroom on a regular basis. So the supply of those PPE items that I just kind of mentioned are they're quite sound. They've been arriving, they are being distributed. We've made conservative assumptions as to consumption rates to make sure that we don't run out, and our vendors really have responded tremendously.
Great, thank you, Adam. And Margaret Allen may want to tune in on the next question about if students are going to be expected to wear masks outside or when they're on the playground, and also if they're in their classroom and they're distanced at 6 feet apart, will masks still be required?
So, Margaret Grace, I'm the Director of Student Health Services. As Board President Raymond said, we've spent a lot of time talking about face masks. We've done a lot of research. We're in touch with experts in the field, physicians, pediatricians, and the consensus is that most children can and should wear a face mask. There will be times when it is appropriate to remove the face mask for maybe a medical reason. If children are out on the playground and they're able to maintain social distance, it may be appropriate to have their face coverings off. Again, we will manage this to the best of our ability. If a child shows up at the bus stop ready to load the bus and doesn't have a face covering, we will provide that. But the expectation is that everybody wears a face mask, and that we do provide times. We want to use common sense and take into account that we have children with special needs sometimes. So face shields will be available, but they are not a replacement for a face mask. We want to make that clear. Those will be used in certain instances, but we will have those available. And I believe that in the governor's directive, there are guidelines for the use of a face shield, so we will have those available as well.
Great, thank you very much. With regards to physical distancing, we've received a number of questions on this topic as well. And our viewers want to know, what are the specific ways that distancing will be carried out in our schools? And some schools use tables instead of desks. What is this going to look like? They specifically want to know if students are going to have to sit on the floor. Are they going to be spaced 3 feet or 6 feet apart? These are some of the questions on that topic that we'd like to address.
Good questions, very good questions. And so right now the guidelines are for 6 feet of social distancing. The CDC has come out, as many of us know, with guidelines from 3 to 6 feet, but currently the guidelines are for 6 feet of social distancing. And as far as the particulars on what that looks like, we've had a lot of teachers that have been used to doing at the table and what that would look like. I know that we've had some kindergarten teachers say, I'm going to be using one of those pool noodles, because that's very visual, and that kind of helps my little ones to be able to know what 6 feet is, which I think, our teachers are very creative and coming up with ways to do that. But if one of our area superintendents, or we have our deputy superintendent here as far as the specific plans, and while they're coming up to the mic, it's important that we understand that it's going to look probably a little bit different at each one of our schools, because our schools have different types of configurations. We have what we would refer to as the pinwheel design in some of our elementary schools. We have what's been referred to lovingly as a sheep shed design, as far as like Libby Booth. We've got Catherine Dunn type models where you have the pods. And then obviously with our high schools and our middle schools, we have very different configurations. We have one-off type buildings such as Elmcrest, Mitchell, which is one of our oldest elementary schools. So it's really going to kind of depend upon what the site facility is going to be looking like for social distancing and in the classroom. So I see Mr. Ernst here is anxiously awaiting to answer this question.
Thank you, Dr. McGill. Joe Ernst, Area Superintendent. To address the question regarding the social distancing within the schools, there's a number of approaches that are being used. Area superintendents are meeting with principals on a daily basis. Principals are meeting with each other by levels, by verticals. And during these conversations, there is a lot of discussion around the actual logistics and what that will look like as far as traffic patterns in the building, what lunchtime will look like, what recess will look like. And with each conversation, I think there becomes better clarity around the approaches that we're going to take. As far as the 6 feet within the classroom, we've had multiple classrooms go in, set up the classrooms to see what that looks like. We've begun to arrange spaces within the building to store items that are used less so that there is greater distance within the classroom. And we're also working with capital projects to really get a firm understanding around the actual 50% capacities within rooms. And again, it's really an effort to maximize the available space and the available resources within a building. And so those are where the conversations have revolved around.
Well, and Mr. Ernst, you talked briefly about recess, playground, lunch. We've had a large number of questions that are asking specifically what is that going to look like at all levels of our schools. Can you address that for us?
Sure. When we look at the lunch configurations, right now principals are working with nutrition services around a variety of models that they can implement in their building. As Dr. McNeil had mentioned, each building has unique configurations, and based on the configurations and the way that the schedule is developed, principals are working with nutrition services to design various models. A grab-and-go model, a delivery to the classroom type model, stations within the school where lunches can be picked up. So there's a variety of approaches that can be used at schools right now. So that kind of speaks to the lunch side of things. As far as recess, and I think some of the overarching concern that I've heard, it's really around us teaching our kids, as we do at the beginning of every school year, very explicit rules, procedures, and expectations, and really working to teach those, reinforce those, and really help our students understand the new way of schooling that will be approaching it, from using the restrooms, using the sinks, when these can be used, how to systematically approach it so that when they are being used, we're working to keep distance. And so I will tell you that right now, our principals have been engaging in substantive conversations on a daily basis, really looking to work within our guidelines and really maintain the social distancing the very best we can within the school.
As you're addressing this with our students learning the new rules and procedures, would you be able to address parent pickup and drop-off at our schools? That's been a question that we've been asked a number of times as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the real benefits of us working together with our Board of Trustees last week to arrive at some decisions about what the models will look like at schools, it allows schools to take a deeper dive right now around all of these issues. When you look at the pickup procedures, also related to that will be our busing. And so we're working with transportation to see the number of students that will be riding the buses. Will there be one pickup time or drop-off time, or two pickup or drop-off times? After we have that kind of identified, then of course we have to look at the traffic patterns at the school. And as we know, particularly with some of our younger students, our parents like to come onto the campus and pick up their children. And I think as a district, we've really maintained a stance around the importance of masks. And so when we come onto those school grounds, really respecting that, honoring our efforts to make sure that we are getting kids back in school as much as we possibly can, and really working to support their safety.
Great, thank you. The next question on this topic asks about, will class sizes be reduced to meet the physical distancing requirements?
So I'll go ahead and start, and then if you want to jump in, Mr. Ernst. When we're taking a look at our classroom size capacity, and I want to do a shout out to our facilities and our capital projects team, because they have just done an amazing job. Our demographer has literally gone through every single classroom and looked at what the square footage is, so that we can find out what the actual capacity is, so that we are in compliance with the governor's directive around 50% capacity and what that looks like. So as far as the class size, we're going to have to do some creative type of thinking as far as some multi-grade levels or configurations to where one of our teachers may have a second grade classroom, and typically I would have 25 students in that particular classroom. The good thing is about our primary classes is that we do have classroom size reduction. So our classroom sizes are already lower than our typical 4 through 12 grades. So within the actual classroom, it's just going to, take a look at what the individual schedules are. I know that Mrs. Beiersdorf, our deputy superintendent, has been working with the area superintendents as far as master schedules, what those classes are going to look like, because as you know, in high school, we have some pretty large classrooms, or class sizes, when you're talking about physical education or orchestra or those types of classes. And so they're working with our principals and with our administrators as far as what that's going to be looking like. So I'm not sure, Joe, if you want to add.
Yeah, and really just to build on that, the hybrid model that we have at the middle school and the high school will lend itself well to being able to have the necessary numbers within the classroom. And so Dr. McNeil really was able to speak to some of the elementary components of this, the advantages of class size reduction in first and second grade, some of the unique configurations that we'll see at schools as far as teacher rotation, looking to possibly departmentalize to some aspect the different subjects within the grades, to have teachers moving rather than our students moving, and then finding creative structures for independent work that students can work on when they're away from the teacher, yet is still supported within a school day. And then again, on the hybrid model and having half of our kids there on the A day and half on the B day, it's really going to work well in terms of us being able to stay within the numbers and the capacities of each of the rooms.
Great. Thank you very much.
Colleen,
Yes.
if I could just take a moment, I think all of these, face coverings, physical distancing, the, work that's going on behind the scenes to make it possible, really highlight a few things that I just wanted to comment on. That when we know this is not going to be a normal school year for our students, none of this is normal. We've done our best to try to find a way to make it feel as normal as possible for our kids so that they can still have an experience where they're in front of a teacher and in a classroom. With that comes some sacrifices of physical distancing and face coverings. And so, I just want the community to understand that we might be talking like this is easy piece of cake. It is by no means easy. The staff at these schools and the staff in this room have been working so hard to come up with these plans and will continue to work so hard to make all of this work. Because it's what we believe is right for our community. And I just will end by reiterating something that Dr. McNeil said at the top. We just ask the community to have some patience at this time. We are doing our best to answer a lot of these questions, and I know we've been able to, but there's so much more work to be done, and I think a lot of that work is at the site level. So have patience with your principals and know that everyone is doing their best right now to just make the 2020-2021 school year as good a year as we can possibly make of it. So I don't want to take up any more time, but I just thought that was an important point to make.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think this is a good time we can transition to another topic, and I think we'll talk about some of the budget questions we've had. We may want to have our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Mark Mathers, join us at the microphone, but people are asking if we are just opening schools in order to get the federal funds, or if we need to wait for direction from the federal government before we reopen our schools. They're also asking about if Washoe County citizens are paying taxes, why do we care about these federal funds?
Oh,
How is that for a question? Kind of a big
it's
one.
a multi-part question.
It
Mark-
is.
So Mark Mathers, Chief Financial Officer. So we're not opening schools to receive federal funds. Most of our funding is from the state or from local sources. So that's a quick answer to the question.
Okay, and so why do we care about federal funding?
Well, it's really critical to cover all the PPE costs that Adam spoke to. Without federal funding, we're going to have millions of dollars of those kind of costs. So it's really critical that we do receive federal funds to cover those new costs that we have.
Okay, great. Another question, a couple of questions we received ask about our ability to hire teachers to staff our classrooms if we do have smaller classrooms for both in-person and distance learning. Is that a question you want to tackle?
I think that probably best be answered by our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Great.
Thank you, Colleen. Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer. With respect to hiring, we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern while we waited to see what the needs were going to be and what the reopening plans were. But we do have a large number of people in the hiring pools who are anxious for us to open positions and to begin the hiring process when appropriate to do so. And we, of course, have a dedicated recruiting team that has continued with throughout the pandemic to support those efforts and to help build up those hiring pools. So we feel confident in our ability to meet the needs.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll just add a little bit here, if you don't mind, Colleen.
No,
to
absolutely.
Mr. Mather's point, too, I think it's important. We know that we're in the midst of a special session right now, and the governor's recommendation as far as the budget reductions, we know that the state is looking at a terrible deficit of about $1.2 billion. And those of us that have been around a long time, as far as the last great recession that happened and the tremendous impact that made on school districts. And, the sad point is that we were just coming to the point where we were kind of seeing the light of day on that. And somebody, had asked, what does this mean as far as, you're in the midst of a pandemic, you're in the midst of a special session. And it's kind of like, well, this is where we're at. And we're going to do everything that we possibly can in order to meet, the needs of our students and our employees. The governor is working very, very hard. Our state superintendent, our legislators are working very, very hard to solve all of these budget types of issues. And so, it's just very difficult decisions that are going to have to be made pretty soon.
And will have a direct impact. So we're waiting for it all so that we can make further decisions, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's keep moving through some of our different topics. We have a number of questions on technology, computer devices. One is an interesting thought question here. It says, would it be possible to coordinate with the Boys and Girls Club to provide middle school students with multiple computer labs so that they can access their online hybrid learning for the 3 days they aren't attending school in person, and receive support from the club staff for logging on and answering questions? This particular questioner has an incoming 7th grade student who has an IEP that would benefit from having a supervised place to learn. And they also feel that this option might eliminate some of the concerns related to providing meals and providing internet. So I guess, are we working with these wonderful community partners we have?
We absolutely are, and we have a very good relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, and I know Mike Worm, the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. This has impacted them as well too, and they've done some phenomenal summer programming around that as well. So we are continuing to work with the Boys and Girls Club. We're continuing to work with many of our other partners as well, communities and schools. And there may be a question as far as some of our other nonprofits. And I know our Chief Information Officer, Dr. Turner, is sitting right around the corner. There he is. But I also want to do a little shout out before he steps up to the plate to our Education Alliance. And the Education Alliance has raised thousands and thousands of dollars to provide devices to our students so that middle schooler has the possibility of actually having their own personal device, which is going to be able to help our family.
I think you're cheating and looking at my questions here.
Oh, no.
That kind of segues into some of these
there you
next
go.
questions. They're asking if we will be able to give students laptops or tablets to facilitate their learning. And then what we're going to do with students that may not have internet access, even if they do get a computer and that their family can't afford that. So we'll turn it over to you for some answers.
So I'm Chris Turner, Chief Information Officer. Thank you, President Raymond and Superintendent McNeil. We were anticipating this very question. We can rely on the survey data that we collected earlier in the school year, last year in March when we shut down. And we can also use the process that we've got. We've developed a process. We've got one in place for distributing the technology that we have on order, but we're still awaiting. And then when the technology arrives to us, we've got plans to order 4,000 laptops. When it arrives to us, we have to asset tag it, we have to image it, we have to prepare it to distribute it, and then we have a plan where we'll work together with the building principals to distribute the devices to the families most in need.
And do you know if these will be a device for every student? We have a number of families that have asked us about having multiple children and not having enough resources in their home for them to all accomplish their work as necessary.
So what we have plans for right now, the resources that we have available to us will only allow us at this point to attempt to get a device for every family that's in need. Once we identify additional resources and can acquire 7,000 additional laptops, then we'll be in a place where we can help families that have more than one child enrolled in the school district.
Okay, great. I think that answers those questions pretty well.
Did you want to maybe hit on the Wi-Fi, the hotspots, and
yes.
the connectivity issues?
Oh, yes, the internet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
yes, thank you.
I think our process for the mobile hotspots matches up with our process for distributing the laptops. But we can supplement internet connections for our families using, we have Wi-Fi enabled buses that we will be moving around the district on a schedule in populations with high need and dense populations where we can maximize that benefit. And then we will also we're in the process of acquiring 3,000 mobile hotspots. Half have already arrived, and we're in the process of onboarding those devices, and we're going to match up with our device distribution methods, and we'll work through the building principals to identify those families that are most in need.
Wonderful. And is the plan to have that begin at the beginning of the school year?
We would like to get everything. We would like to work that in conjunction with the events that the buildings already have scheduled, like the family nights and the curriculum nights and the visitation nights.
Okay, great. And scheduling and information about those, people would be best suited to go to their school level to get that information?
I would agree on that, but the problem is we're still in the process of ordering devices. We have yet to receive any laptops, and what we're being told is there's a 4 to 6 week delay on ordering because we're up against the entire rest of the country who's also trying to pivot and serve families' needs in these ways.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Anything else to add to that, ladies?
I was just going to see, I don't know, Debbie, if you want to talk maybe about the conversation around the priority on how we would prioritize laptops as far as with seniors and...
As she's coming up, I'll just remind everyone at the podium to speak directly into the mic to make sure everyone can hear you.
So thank you, Dr. McNeil. Again, Deborah Beiersdorf, Deputy Superintendent. So yes, the Office of School Leadership and myself have been working very closely with our Information Technology office under the direction of Dr. Turner to build a plan of where the priorities would be for the distribution of those devices that Dr. Turner just talked about. So we will be starting with our high school students and our middle school students. So our students that would be attending school in the hybrid model and absolutely need access to a device on those days that they're not in the school building. That we will, as soon as we can, as Dr. Turner talked about as well, reaching out and assisting our elementary school families as well who need devices at home, especially for our students who might not be attending school full-time and choosing the distance learning model that's available to them.
Thank you.
Great. And Deputy Beiersdorf, you might want to stay there for a moment because we have a number of questions on basically what I'm calling what is school going to look like next year. And I think you might be able to touch on some of these with some support as well. But will music, library, PE, computer classes, culinary arts, weights be available? What is it going to look like?
Great question, and a question that a lot of us are getting. And I could add career and technical education to that, and I could add internships for our high school students as well. School's going to look different next year, and I know President Raymond talked about that earlier. It's not going to be normal, business as usual, at least not for the foreseeable future. So we also, we have so much amazing programming across our schools, elementary, middle, and high school. I think about two-way immersion at some of our elementary schools, Mount Rose and Beck Elementary School. I think about the magnet programs, our gifted and talented magnet programs that are at some of our middle schools, our GT Gate Institute up at Hug High School, our CTE signature programs, world language programs, international baccalaureate. I could go on and on with the amazing access to programming in our school district. Music, fine arts, theater, athletics. I mean, everything that we do as a public school system is being impacted by what's happening right now. So there's no easy answers about what music may look like at an elementary school. The music classroom may need to be utilized as a kind of a regular classroom space as we're working to ensure social distancing expectations are in place. The music teacher may need to travel to a classroom and do music with a group of students as well. It's just hard to plan for right now, given the directives that we're operating under right now. But our principals and our teachers, we say it over and over, and it is so true. They're amazing. They're creative, hardworking people. And just some of the ideas and the things that I'm hearing about right now. How does a student utilize or go into a welding lab at Reed High School as part of their amazing signature program, or robotics up at McQueen High School? Teachers are coming up with plans on how to maintain that social distancing while wearing our face coverings so students can still access the program. So it will be determined a lot on the individual site, the programming at the site, the space available at the site. So it's a big question, but I think as we're getting closer to the beginning of school, which is not that far away now, lots of creative ideas, but it will look different. I mean, absolutely it will.
And I'm not sure if this is for you or perhaps Area Superintendent Ernst might be able. A lot of folks were asking about at the elementary school level, if the music teachers or librarians are going to be supervising split classrooms, how will that impact those programs?
Mm-hmm. There is most definitely going to be a need in a number of our elementary schools to use the music room, as I just talked about, the music classroom, and likely the library, and very possibly the cafeteria or the multipurpose room as learning spaces in order to ensure the current Phase 2 guidelines that we must follow. So again, it's going to be site specific. It's going to depend on, as Dr. McNeil talked about at the very beginning of our time together, our schools are so different. A Spanish Springs Elementary School looks very different from a Mitchell Elementary School, which looks very different from a Pleasant Valley Elementary School. So a lot of it is going to be dependent on the spaces and the spaces that are needed in order to ensure that our elementary students can come back safely to their school building. Our staff, our teachers can come back safely and maintain all of the guidelines that we're expected to follow.
Great. It sounds like sports and some of these career technical education electives will be offered, but they're just going to look different. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Our high school students, boy, I think about our class of 2021, about to start their last year of high school. We have students that are on specific pathways of study, college career ready, have goals and hopes and dreams for when they graduate in less than a year now. And it's very, very important that we do everything we can to maintain as much of that programming as we possibly can. So we're working very, very hard on that as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We have a number of questions here on the AB rotation calendar for our secondary students. Folks are questioning, how is it going to be decided which students are on the A rotation and which are on the B? And then this is an interesting question. They want to know how testing is going to work for the AB rotation schedule as well, because they felt that students that take the test first may be able to share information, which is clever, with the day 2 students.
I'm sure our teachers have not thought of that.
So there are some questions around that. We'll welcome you back, Mr. Ernst.
Thank you. The AB schedule still is really being worked on. I think our first thing that we can do is get the information from the survey. Surveys are going out this evening for high school, middle school Wednesday, and Thursday for our elementary schools. That's going to help us get an understanding at each school of parent intentions about returning to that AB schedule or perhaps a distance learning model. Once we have that identified, then our schools are going to work together with our registrars, our counselors, our transportation department, looking at infant and campus to see what families have siblings in middle school and high school, and really make some extended efforts to offer families the option of, if they would like their children to be on the same A day. I was just talking with a parent today. If we have a student at a middle school and a student at a high school, really the desire to do that while maintaining strong programming for her students. And so those are the efforts that will be made around getting families to be on the same schedule. So there will be a lot that goes into that.
Great. You mentioned the survey. I wonder if it would be appropriate for us to address that and maybe talk about the importance of providing that information when you get the survey.
Yes, we really appreciate everybody's efforts to take that survey. We've worked to keep it very concise, and our hopes is that people will have the opportunity to take that survey, because again, that will help each of our schools take significant steps forward to further the educational design within the building, work on schedules. We know middle school and high school, there is a lot of thought around the schedules, block schedules versus 6 and 7 period schedules, the benefits of each. And as we get this information, that's going to help continue to inform schools so that they can then be responsive. And as Mrs. Beiersdorf said, school is a month away. And so we'll need to work on developing those schedules and getting those schedules out to the students and the families.
Great. And I'm sure it's a pretty quick turnaround, so we can get that information and get moving. So we'll encourage our families to take that. Someone is asking if all of these mandates are applicable at our incline schools.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You mean as far as face covering, social distancing, hygiene? Absolutely. Yes. Whether we're at incline, whether we're in Natchez, whether we're in Gerlach, the mandates are the mandates.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. I think it would be another opportunity to just describe, though, that we recognize that some of our schools are set up a little differently, much like we've talked about that each elementary school looks a little different. There might be a school like Gerlach won't necessarily have a AB rotation because it's such a small school. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that's, and for incline, because they are smaller numbers, we're actually able to do, and I know Dr. Parks is the former area superintendent for incline, but maybe he could speak a little bit to incline. But For incline, they're actually able to do in-person instruction because their numbers are smaller to that point as far as for social distancing and able to get the numbers of students in the schools as well. Their calendar's a little bit different than us. They're starting a little bit later, but that's their typical calendar as well.
Okay, great. Some of our elementary families are wondering how it's going to work with school supplies because so many of these students share the supplies. Will parents be responsible for providing these? Will the schools? What about families that can't afford them? How do you know that they won't be shared? Questions like that.
So I see Mr. Ernst coming back up, and I think this is just, I'll go ahead and start, Joe, and then jump in. I think this is just one of those questions that, pre-pandemic, when we had supply lists go out, and I can say this as a former elementary school principal, we really took a deep look as far as how those supply lists went out, and there will never be a time where a family will go out if a teacher is requesting crayons or notebooks, we will always, and we always have, taken care of students that may not be able to afford school supplies.
And just to further along those lines, really our schools have talked about individualizing the material. So at times in the 21st century learning environment that we live, we want collaboration, we want shared space, and we're working together. We're now kind of taking a step back from that and really redesigning to stay within our safety parameters. And schools have really talked about individualizing supplies. So there no longer will be the communal supplies that kids are sharing or what have you. It'll be individual to them. Schools will still work to provide those supplies, those necessary supplies for the kids. When you start to look at the use of manipulatives and you look at the use of some learning tools, certainly the teaching methodologies will have to match the use of those manipulatives to make it a practical something so that they can be used by an individual, perhaps cleaned at another time, and then used the following date. So you're really looking, and school principals and leadership teams, department leaders are all working together to kind of come up with these solutions together. But it's really matching your methodologies with the guidelines that we have in place.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Ernst. I think we'll take one more question on kind of the school day before we move on to some important questions about transportation. But we have some of our viewers that have asked about testing, MAP, SBAC, SAT, ACT, and are curious what it's going to look like in the 2021 school year.
So a little bit about, so we're working very closely. So I meet on a weekly basis with the other district superintendents as well as the state superintendent. And I know that she is very interested in looking at ways to where we can minimize mandated tests, so such as the SBAC and ACT and those types of things, so that it's a lot less stress on our students, but importantly, a lot less stress on our teachers as well. And I know our Chief Accountability Officer, Mr. Ben Hayes, he's been working very hard with our Deputy Superintendent and our area superintendents at looking at a balanced assessment system. And if Ben wants to come in and no, okay. So
wow.
So, but before
he was kidding.
Before he gets up, I just want to say, it's important for our teachers to know too that we recognize that when our students come back, the very first thing that I do not want a teacher to worry about is assessment. I absolutely understand the COVID slide. Our mission is for academic achievement. But the thing that our teachers and our students really want is to see one another and really just appreciate that we're here and that we're humanity. And that's the number one thing. The social emotional aspect of having our children back in school is our number one priority. And I know that's very important to President Raymond and our entire school board. So I just want to make sure that that is out there, that our number one thing is to make sure that our students are safe, that they know that they are loved, and that our teachers are there to support them, which they are.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Ben Hayes, Chief Accountability and Assessment Officer. I will first reiterate Superintendent McNeil's comments that when we get back, we have student stuff to do. We have school stuff to do. So assessment will not be part of the quick return. We have been, as Superintendent McNeil has said, working all year on getting assessment back to kids. So it should be an assessment of where that child is on the learning standards, and it should be an only to help that child and help the educator help that child progress. So we've been doing a lot of work on getting some of the threat and high stakes out of assessment and get it back to the classroom. So first, one thing you will notice this year, COVID or not, is that there's going to be more classroom-based assessments that are close to the student, close to the teachers, and the teachers can discuss collaboratively how the students did in real time instead of waiting months for the data. There will still be some MAP, not as much MAP testing, but we won't let that become a threat. We won't let that get in the way of safety, certainly, or the education of our students. So we'll explore some at-home models of MAP testing or some optional models of MAP testing, again, leaning toward more of the classroom standards-based assessment. And then finally, for big tests like ACT, SAT, and Smarter Balance, we're not sure to what extent those will look like. I can assure you the leadership team and the trustees will always march towards what's best for kids, what's non-threatening for kids. So if we need to work out SBAC to find out where the child is on their assessment, where they are on their standards, then we will do that, but in a kind of maybe a more spread out environment and a non-stress environment. A lot of colleges have gone away from ACT the last couple, certainly for this year, and SAT for entrance exams, so there's not as high stakes on them. We'll certainly be supporting students that want to take those assessments, but again, we won't let the health and safety of our educators and students be swayed away from by tests or scheduling tests.
Great, thank you very much. That was thorough. We appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to transportation on our school buses. We have some questions about the bus capacity being at 50%. How will it be determined which children can ride the bus? Will bus frequency be increased? How many students are going to be on the bus? And what will seating look like? Welcome.
Thank you. Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer. So to answer some of your questions, based on the current state and Washoe County Health District guidance, we plan on transporting every student that is outside the current walk zones to and from school. Now, the guidance has to be carefully monitored, and right now the current guidance is from the directive of the governor is up to 50% capacity occupancy with no more than 50 people in a space. That includes buses. Now we're working closely with the state and the Washoe County Health District to be able to keep that 50% occupancy, and that definitely includes wearing face coverings for all of our students and for our bus driver. But we plan on transporting every student, and that includes the federal and state mandated programs, special ed students, English language learners, foster children, and children in transition. Okay,
great. And what's the cleaning protocol going to be followed for the buses as students are getting ready to get on and they're going on and off throughout the day? We've had a few folks asking about that.
Yeah, we're going to have several protocols that we're going to have in place for our buses. Now, we're working on finalizing that protocol, but we plan on cleaning and disinfecting at the beginning and at the end of every route. But a route is made up of many different runs, and that means like you could drop off elementary school students, then pick up high school students. So there will also be a quick disinfection between the runs that the bus driver will actually be providing. We're also trying to test some electrostatic sprayers to see if we can make that process actually even a little bit quicker. But there's also going to be a lot of protocols in place for our students. We're going to load back to front and unload front to back to limit contacts. We're going to keep roof hatches open and strategic windows open for airflow. We're going to keep bus air vents open, for additional airflow. We're going to have hand sanitizer available on the buses. We're going to have face coverings available for those students that may not have one that day, but it is important, it is imperative that our students wear masks every day.
Okay. It was mentioned that there might be staggered times for our buses, and we have some folks asking if that has an impact on the school start time or if that system will be utilized.
Now, this is all dependent on that state guidelines and being able to have 50% capacity on our buses. But if we are able to maintain that, depending on the final numbers of how many students will actually be utilizing our buses, we could have staggered starts up to about 20% of our schools at 50% occupancy. That doesn't mean different start times for the school day. It just means that we may have some students that get dropped earlier, and then the bus goes back out to pick up more students. So we're working on that. We're going to find out how many students are going to utilize the bus system, and based on that, we will see how many schools may have to have a staggered start. Those would mostly be outside the McCarran ring.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. Anything you ladies want to add to that, or okay?
You know, I think interestingly, enough, and we belong to the Council of Great City Schools, and it's important for our community to know that obviously this is not just a Washoe County issue. Transportation is a national issue, and I'm on phone calls every week with the Council of Great City Schools. I know President Raymond is as well. But we've learned a lot from our council members and our council friends that we're trying to, take all of this information and come up with some of these suggestions. And Pete and his team have really studied this very, very hard to make sure that our bus drivers and our students are safe. And I wasn't quite sure if you wanted to say just a couple of words about Council of Great City Schools as well, too.
Sure, I can just add, and thank you, Pete, that, none of the decisions that have been made for our reopening plans have been made in a bubble of just, members of the district staff. It's gone not just beyond to our task force, which includes parents and teachers and community members, physicians, as was mentioned at the beginning, but it has gone, nationally and internationally. I know not just, Superintendent McNeil and I are taking advantage of some of the opportunities to hear from other districts and what they're doing, but so many of our leadership team are working to see what best practices we can already gain from looking at districts outside of the U.S. that have opened schools or even daycare centers in the U.S., but also, looking at large districts similar to ours and what their plans are. Of course, we're not all the same, and a decision for Washoe is going to be very different than a decision for Boise, Idaho, for Clark County, for LA or San Diego. We are a unique community, and we're going to base the decisions on what is right for our students and our families and our staff in this community. But it's been extremely helpful to have resources to look to for ideas and best practices.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much. Another important topic that we want to address is with some questions about our vulnerable populations and special education. And I know we have our two of our directors from special education here that help. And I think it would be best if we could maybe start out, and it might help a lot of people with these varied questions, if we can kind of define the vulnerable populations that are going to be attending school every day.
Absolutely, and I know our deputy superintendent has been working really hard to make sure that our vulnerable populations, and that is very clear guidance to our principals as far as our populations, our vulnerable populations. And then we do have Dr. Medulla here and Marie Dixon here, who will also be able to answer those questions too.
So thank you, Dr. McNeil. Yes, we've been very, very mindful of the support for all of our students when we think about the return to school, and we've been very mindful about the support for students that we talk about in vulnerable populations. So our students, it's very important for all of our kids to come back to their buildings full time, but for a number of our students is very, very important for a variety of reasons. So school district in collaboration with our principals, with our committees that are working on our return plans, with our leadership team, have identified a number of vulnerable populations of students that will return full time. Now, of course, at our elementary level, our model is full in-person learning. So our students, for the most part, will be returning to their elementary schools in August. But for our middle schools and high schools, I think this is where this is very, very important. So vulnerable populations, such as students that are receiving special education services that are on individual education plans, IEP plans, students who are receiving gifted and talented support and services and programming as well. They will be asked to come back full-time as well. Students who are new to country, students who are English learners new to country, students that are refugee students. We have amazing refugee families that are in our school district. Students that are in transition right now, students that are perhaps in foster care as well. So we've worked really, really hard to identify these student groups and have shared that information with our principals this week. And then we shared information at last week's trustees meeting, and we'll continue to share that information with our families. So if I could, I'd like to invite up, not sure who's coming up first.
They're going to do Rochambeau.
There they are, Dr. Jessica Medulla, who is one of our amazing directors in our special education department.
Great. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi there. Did you want to expand on that, or are you good with me going on with some new questions?
I think Mrs. Beiersdorf answered it.
Perfect. So we have a lot of questions about students that have sensory issues that will really not wear anything on their face or head, and wanting to know if they'll be exempt from that requirement. And also if you could maybe address that they have difficulty with adults that wear masks in front of them. And teachers, these are from some of our educators and our parents, but they want to know what the teacher is going to do. Does the teacher wear a mask? Do the kids wear masks? What will that look like? And especially, too, because seeing the teacher speak is sometimes very important for the communication and learning skills.
Right. So within the guidance from the governor, there is an exception for some students with some exceptions to wearing the mask. Most situations will be determined on the school site, and we are working to have clear face shields for our teachers and staff working with students, so that communication will not be a barrier.
Okay, great. And then, can you address social distancing for these students, or physical distancing? And a number of our questioners are working with our early childhood education classroom students and are concerned about what will be required.
Okay, and if I may invite my team partner here.
Yes, absolutely. We welcome you, Anne Marie.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm a little short there. For our early childhood, we have reduced the number of students in classrooms. The same screening measures will be in place for all students. The items for play will be accessible and used on a rotation basis. So early childhood students will attend 2 full days, maybe Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. And then on Wednesdays and after school on Fridays, they will make sure that we are disinfecting all of the items to ensure the safety of our students. And a different set of toys will be used every 2 days for our students.
And that's their normal schedule, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday?
It depends on the school site.
Okay.
But it will be site specific and working closely with that principal and the teachers.
Okay. There's also some concern about the interaction with the typical peers, and that's used in a lot of our schools for students to develop their social skills and learning. And people are wondering if elementary students will be able to transition into other classes.
Absolutely, yes. We are still going to follow students' IEP minutes. Principals are well aware of the IEP minute requirements, and they're working on a plan to make sure that all students receive the services that are written in their IEP plans.
Okay. And then there's also a little bit more specific question about the impaired or special populations like SIP, that students in those classes invade the space of others, and the writer here on this question said not on purpose. And they want to know if these students will be mixing with the general population students as well.
If it's written in their IEP, absolutely they will. We will make sure that we know that there are going to be less peers in a space. We're going to work on those positive reinforcements, just as we do work on behavior plans to make sure that we are rewarding students. And then making sure that under the Office of School Leadership and Special Education, we will be working with specific school sites to support them if they are having any issues.
Okay, great. We have a few folks that are questioning too about the continuation of the co-taught classes and if that will continue in the 2021 school year.
That would be site specific based upon each school and the needs of each school site. If it was written into a student's IEP, we will absolutely follow that, but we will take guidance from schools on how they're going to roll that out.
Okay, great. And although we do have many more questions on this topic, we have several other topics we haven't hit yet, so I'm going to try to accelerate that. So thank you, ladies. And we have a few questions on the health and wellness and what we're going to do to ensure that teachers, students, and staff are safe in the buildings. And a lot of these questions are asking about COVID testing, temperature taking, what happens if someone is infected with COVID? What will that look like in the classroom? Will the classroom have to be quarantined? Will the school? Any outbreaks, how will they be handled? And I think there's a lot of concern about that, especially in the middle and high schools where teachers are exposed to a lot more students. So we'll welcome you back, Margaret Grace.
Margaret Allen. That's a lot of question. I'll start out with the safety of staff and students. What we're doing is making sure everybody's wearing their face coverings as much as possible. You talked about the vulnerable populations. We will deal with those individually, make sure that there is a plan for those students who cannot keep a face mask on or keep social distance. But for staff, we do want to make sure that everybody is washing their hands, wearing their mask appropriately. As I talk, mine is coming down. So we're going to do hand washing, masks, social distancing as much as possible, observing and learning what we need to do. We have decided not to do screening, mass screening, because it was not practical or feasible. We didn't want to place students in another situation where we're trying to get them into school and they're piling up at the door, and then we're segregating one student because they have been running or sitting in a hot car and their temperature is high. We feel that health starts at home, and we are going to use a tool for staff and families that we want them to be reviewing every day before they come to school. If we were going to take temperatures, we'd have to do it at the bus station. By the time a student gets on the bus and to school with a temperature, they've already exposed a lot of people. So we really feel strongly that this questionnaire is going to help us all assess, am I well enough to be at school? And if not, we're going to follow our normal process. If a child comes to school and is sick, they will be sent to the clinic where they will be screened a little bit more in depth. We will have clinic protocols where sick students are separated from students that come in for a blood sugar check. All of that will be done at the beginning of school. The school nurses will figure out those plans and locations for that. Did I capture, you talked about testing.
Right, like if COVID testing will be available at the schools, or is there a plan for that?
At this point, there is not. The health district continues to do COVID testing for both symptomatic and asymptomatic cases. And so we will refer people to the health district for testing if that's what needs to be done.
Okay. And then if you could also just briefly touch on if and when there are COVID cases at the class or in a school, how will families be notified and what will the protocol be for that?
So the school district has an outbreak protocol that we are working on with the health district right now. We're trying to make sure that it addresses COVID. Things may be different this fall in, COVID screening. I think we shut down a school back in March, and that was pretty aggressive. That's when COVID was just coming out. They did not know what they were dealing with, and so out of an abundance of caution, they, shut the school down for a day, and then we went into spring break. Each case is going to be very different. There's times a COVID case may be asymptomatic and unknown. There may be times where the person has COVID and they have symptoms. There may be a family member. So what we're going to do is we are coming up with some screening tools when a person calls into the school that their child is sick. Our secretaries or whoever answers the phone will be trained to screen them. They will then hand that information off to the clinic, the health clinic, and eventually to the school nurse. We will work very closely with the health district in making determination of who is going to be excluded for how many days, and is it a classroom, is it a school, is it a district? A lot is going to depend on what is happening in the community at the time. And so to give specifics, it's really hard to say. We have pediatricians on the call as well, and they are talking about it is up to the health district to make the determination. They know what's happening in the classroom, where a physician might just know their one patient and their one family. So we will be, the school nurses and the clinic aides will be very busy this fall in trying to manage, cases, suspected cases, and we will be working closely with the health district to determine exclusions. We would like to put something out in writing, but it is sometimes so case specific that we don't want to confuse the public. But we're working on that now. We're looking at, is that feasible?
Great. Thank you very much.
Did I get all those questions?
I think you hit most of them, and I do think the next question is probably for our facility management officer. It has to do with, and we received this from a number of people, but it has to do with HVAC systems and how safe they are, and if COVID can spread that way. And we did receive this question numerous times, and so I think it's important for us to have it answered if we can.
Absolutely. I see Mr. Searcy coming up to
Thank
talk
you.
about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system.
Thanks for the acronym clarification, Superintendent. Adam Searcy again, Chief of Facilities. So yes, HVAC systems, certainly part of our risk reduction strategy and a layer of protection in our buildings. Our systems have been running continuously and will continue to do so. We are making adjustments to our balanced systems to intake greater amounts of outdoor air is basically what that does. It dilutes and brings in fresh, clean air at a greater degree than it already is into the building and circulates it throughout the day. Extremely, a much lower level risk factor of somehow virus transmission through an HVAC system versus actually close person-to-person contact, which is mitigated with the masks and social distancing, or touching of surfaces and then touching your own person. Nevertheless, we are addressing that through increased outdoor air circulation, and we are going to be extending the hours that our systems run in an occupied mode. So basically, when we're not in our schools, we turn our systems down just like many people do in their homes. Same sort of concept. We're going to extend that occupancy setting for an hour before and after school to basically flush the air through the school before everybody comes into the building, and then keep that circulation at a greater volume throughout the day, bringing in more fresh air to help mitigate that risk.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that. That was very clear. Okay, we have a couple more topics we absolutely need to get to. So let's start with the personnel type questions. We've heard from a lot of our staff and teachers, and they're wondering things like, can the transfer deadline be extended to give opportunities to openings that may come up as teachers are deciding to resign or retire? They're also very interested in knowing about joining the distance learning cadre, what that looks like, how you do it, is it guaranteed to hold their spot next school year if they do that? So these are kind of some technical questions, but we received them from a number of our question askers tonight.
Yes, Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer. So I will start with questions around the distance learning cadre, and I will let staff know that tomorrow we'll be sending out a questionnaire that we've worked in close partnership with the Washoe Education Association to develop in order to better understand our individual employee circumstances, and then marry that up with the information that we hope to obtain from the student enrollment survey, and determine how many distance learning educators we would need, and the process that we'll utilize to identify who goes into which positions. So anyone who's familiar with our collective bargaining agreements knows that things like the transfer process and the overage process are outlined in those agreements. So we'll be working closely with WEA as the data points become available to us to determine the process that will be utilized, and then to iron out some of the questions like what happens next year, and some of the other kind of procedural questions. Okay. I feel like there was a first part that I missed, though.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just add to the question that I asked. A lot of people that are interested in the distance learning positions are older teachers or teachers that either themselves have the underlying causes or conditions or live with people that do. The transfer, the other part of the question was regarding their position, their current position for the following school year, if they'd be guaranteed to be able to go back to that position.
So all of our teachers are hired on what are called standard contracts, and so they have overage rights under the provisions outlined in the collective bargaining agreements. The process, again, that we would utilize to determine who moves into distance learning positions this year and then where those folks go next year is something that we'll be working closely with WEA to finalize. I imagine that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, we'll look to many of the processes that we have now to figure out, what we can utilize and replicate and what needs to be changed given the circumstances. But more information will definitely be coming soon. It really does hinge on the data at this point. So understanding what our students are planning and what our students and families are planning for next year will drive what the needs are in terms of our staff, and then working with our individual staff members to understand what their circumstances are. Just a quick plug for the survey that's going to go out tomorrow to staff. It's a quick turnaround time, and we totally understand that, but this is obviously really important data for us and for our employees, and so responsiveness to that information is very much appreciated because it will absolutely inform the work that we do over the next days and weeks in making these determinations.
Absolutely. We have a number of positions: teacher coaches, ELD site facilitators, literacy strategists, and they go to multiple schools now. Will that continue?
So those are our itinerant staff, and if I could, I'd like to tap in my colleague, Mrs. Beiersdorf, to speak a little bit around the scheduling. I did notice that there was another question around substitutes and moving around from school to school. I can speak to that while we disinfect the podium.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to address substitutes, because there were a number of questions about substitutes for the next school year.
Yeah, and as we consider substitutes moving from location to location, what I can say is that many of our substitutes work in one or two school communities during the year, during a typical year. So I expect that we'll see some of that same continued behavior. And then for our subs that transition from school to school throughout the year, I'm still working on the right way to handle that, but we would try to minimize the number of schools that those guest teachers are supporting, while also balancing to make sure that we have the number of subs that are needed in each location. So more information to come, but by and large, many of our subs are dedicated to particular school communities, and even in some cases, particular teachers that they regularly support. And so I'm still thinking through our day-to-day guest teachers to figure out what to do with them, make sure they
And then
are available.
perhaps before we transition to, I can ask you and Clean, can we have you address sick time? How will it work? And especially with the CARES Act and the 80 hours, those were concerns by staff members.
Sure. Just for clarification, the emergency sick leave provision and the expansion of the FMLA provisions under federal law were added and expanded under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So a lot of people think the CARES Act, but if you receive information about the FFCRA, Family First Coronavirus Response Act, that's what we're talking about. There are up to 80 hours of emergency paid sick leave afforded to employees who are experiencing the effects of COVID-19, who are quarantined, and a variety of other circumstances. And we absolutely are available to help employees in accessing that leave time. For particular situations where an employee is quarantined multiple times or potentially is sick multiple times, we'll be working again with the associations. Compensation, leaves, all of those sorts of things are mandatory subjects of collective bargaining, and so we'll be working closely with our associations to better understand how to support employees.
Great. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you.
And we'll clean the podium real quick and invite Deputy Superintendent Beiersdorf back up to talk about the positions that go from multiple schools.
Thank you, Colleen, very much. I know it's very important to President Raymond and Superintendent McNeil that we are sharing the most up-to-date information that we have tonight. So before I answer that question, I'm going to ask our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Troy Parks, to come up with just some clarification about our inclined schools.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Beiersdorf. Troy Parks, Chief Academic Officer, but I did supervise incline, and in the ever-changing world that we are in with a pandemic going on, I was able to work with Dr. Yoxamer and our new principal, Carrie Michael, at Incline Middle School. And while they have a good problem, it seems like the enrollment in Incline is going up. So in working with them, we clarified that they are going to go with the AB model because of that population increase. And we are extremely confident working together. She was the assistant principal at the high school, that they are going to absolutely be able to meet the needs of the Incline middle school and high school students on the AB model. And that's one of the products of our ever-changing decisions in the pandemic. So I just wanted to provide that as an update.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parks. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. That's hot off the press.
In real time.
Yes.
So hello again. So Colleen, I believe the question was around certified teachers such as literacy specialists, our English language development coaches. I could add to that some of our music teachers that serve more than one school as well. So it is very, very important to us that our students come back to school. And we're very, very fortunate that we're able to put a plan in place where our elementary students, again, given current guidelines, can come back, can come back to school in August full time. This may necessitate for some of our schools additional staff coming in to ensure that we can maintain the current social distancing guidelines, how many students in a room, the capacity of a classroom, the capacity of an entire school. So there may be a need for some of our very talented educators who serve 2 or 3 or sometimes more schools to come in and help maybe with a specific site to ensure that we can bring our elementary school students back full time. We don't know that yet, and I will give a plug for the student family surveys that start this evening here in just a little while with our high school families and then our middle school families and our elementary families on Thursday. So,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. One topic with just a few minutes left that I think is important to get at least a little input out there for our families that are asking has to do with the options that are available for families with regards to distance learning, edgenuity, what is the online, and people are calling it online learning when I believe they are meaning the distance learning part of the curriculum going to look like for our secondary students. They just really want to know what's going to be expected, how will students be evaluated, and will parents have the same role that they did this spring? So I don't know if you want to tackle that or if you would like us to invite someone else up to help us too.
I'll go ahead and get started, and then I think this is a great, opportunity for our new Chief Academic Officer to be able to come up, and or the Deputy Superintendent, whoever wins the game of rock, paper, scissors over there. But I'll go ahead and start out. We do have the option, and so I want to make it very clear, we do have the option of a full distance learning model, North Star online school. There is no cap. There is an application, but there is no cap. So enrollment will continue at North Star, and they use a very different type of curriculum. They use a Pearson curriculum. It's a rigorous type of curriculum. But then in our middle and our high schools, the distance learning on an AB, we're going to be using the program Edgenuity. But then also, and that's a credit-bearing type of program. But then we also have the opportunity that if a family wants to have a full distance learning experience, that they are able to do that within their zoned school as well. So, Dr. Parks?
Dr. McNeil, if I could quickly just add, and I want to make sure we leave time for the real meat of the answer, but I think this is an opportunity to just acknowledge that the Nevada Department of Education requested of us 3 models, and those 3 models really give us a lot of flexibility to move within what we know is an ever-changing pandemic, as we know from the spikes in numbers down to the plateaus. We don't know what to expect in the next year, and so while we are, as a board, very happy that we have the opportunity to provide distance learning for any student that chooses to, and they can move in and out of it if they find that they'd rather be in the classroom, but we know that there may be a time where we have to go into a distance learning mode if we see a spike in cases and we go back to a shelter in place. And so by having all these plans in place, we can move with the positivity rates essentially as they change in our county. So I just want to I think the Nevada Department of Education was very wise in asking for those different models because it helps us be prepared for whatever might come in the months and year ahead.
Absolutely.
Dr. Parks.
Thank you, President Raymond. Troy Parks, Chief Academic Officer. To be very brief about this, since we're out of time, I wanted to emphasize that we are currently working with our principals and designing professional learning around Edgenuity. It is a newer product for us. We just had it last year. What we are really emphasizing is, we know in a pandemic we got to be very focused on our basic needs of our families and our staff. We also have to make sure that they're social and emotionally well. But after that, we are a school district, so we are working very hard at making sure that if a student is participating in distance learning on Edgenuity, that it is the same content, same curriculum, same expectations as the in-person model, and we're working to make those two work compatible and very well together to meet the learning needs of all of our students.
Great, thank you. Well, I will tell you, it is time to conclude our event. We're definitely at our time limit. I would like to thank everyone, and we had a vast number of viewers. We had a lot of people submit questions, and we really appreciate our stakeholders taking the time to do this. I would ask everyone to check our reopening webpage and our frequently asked questions, as we are updating them continually. And any questions that you might not have heard tonight and information that we don't know yet will be found there. So once again, thank you, and I'll allow our president and superintendent to give us a few parting words.
Well, thank you. I just, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, want to thank all of our staff, our families, our community for the really wonderful questions they posed this evening and have been, and I know will continue to pose. These are important topics, and we want to address them. We want to be as transparent and open about communicating during this time as possible, and we will continue to do that. And I think the reopening web page is a wonderful resource for a lot of these answers.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Thank
McNeil.
you. Thank you very much, President Raymond. And I just want to thank all of our leadership team members. You know, our leadership team, our COVID response team, there is no weekend. There is very late nights, and these people have been working literally 24/7 for many, many months. And so I just want to give a huge shout out to our entire team and to everyone that participated in our virtual forum. You know, we talked about having this, and it was important to make sure that we had all the accurate information. And, you know, we're going to get as many questions, like we said, you know, at the top of the hour to get them answered. And then quickly, you know, when we went into shutdown, I had sent a Connect Ed message, and I sent a special Connect Ed message to our students. And so I want to send a special message to our students tonight. Know that we love you. And we want you to come back. You know, my team, they know how emotional I get about this, but as a mom, and we don't want our students to lose their hope and their dreams and their aspirations. There is so much to look forward to in this world, and it's an emotional time in our country. But you know what, kiddos? We're going to do this, and we're going to do it together. And I want you to help your parents out. I want you to help your families. I want you to continue to clean your rooms. I want you to wash your dishes. I want you to wash your hands. I want you to wear your face coverings. And I want you to love your parents. And I want you to love your grandparents and your aunts and your uncles. You know, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it together. And we're going to do it as a school district, and we're going to do it as a community. So thank you to everyone tonight.